Hi, I'm Scott Davis. Welcome to New World Birth. By accessing this presentation, you're inviting me to share this information regarding our passage through this challenging and very hopeful time. And this is the care and feeding of a New World Age report for the Gregorian date of July 1st, 2013, and 1 ebb or road in the Mayan Tzolkin calendar. Also, Saturn's turning direct. We have the Cancer new moon, and Mars is also moving into Cancer. July 1st is 1 ebb, which carries the themes of destiny, guidance, travel, vessel of time, dew from heaven, abundance, organization, caretaking, empathy, growth, service to others, the ladder that connects heaven and earth, the life force, also known as prana in the Vedic tradition, or chi in Chinese culture, harvest, and humility. And I've always loved this Ian Lungold describing road as sometimes being referred to as grass, which is the most bountiful of all life forms, but also the most humble. So the road of life leads us to our true destiny on a spiritual path that we all must travel. And this 13-day period would be a good time to humbly offer service to others. So here I am. Anyway, I've been adding in the human design transits for each Trisena. But if that's something that hasn't been of interest to you, just feel free to forward to the astrology and Mayan Tzolkin calendar stuff later on. It won't hurt my feelings. But for those of you who are learning the system through this experience, I'm just going to go over some basic stuff that we've talked about before, and then I'll look at what the transits are here. Let me just review some information before discussing the neutrino forecast for the one road 13-day period. We start by looking at the sun, the earth, and the moon, and all the planets, and the nodes. And those are what are around here in the outside of this wheel and the spokes. And the ones in black are the information for the one road right at midnight Eastern Daylight Time. And so basically what we're looking at is we look at the same things we look at in astrology, but instead of relating them to like the zodiological constellations or to each other by angle, we're looking at them in relation to hexagrams in the I Ching, which are mapped to specific locations in the body graph. And the body graph is this thing right here in the center. It's also what we have here. And this information is very specific. So these locations never change. Whatever angle it is in Pisces is always the same hexagram. So, for instance, at the beginning of this Trisena, we have the sun, and the sun is this circle, black circle with the dot in it. That's where the sun is. You can see it's in Cancer here in this wheel. And if we go out a little wider, we see that it's in the number 52, and the stack of lines just below the 52, that is the I Ching representation for 52, which is actually, we look at the lines from bottom to top. So this one goes yin, yin, yang, yin, yin, yang for the number 52. And that's where the sun is at the moment of one road when we start this Trisena. And so each shape inside of this body graph over here, these represent the next stage in our evolution as humans, from the idea of, that we have 7 chakras, which we have those right here. That's no longer the energetic of human beings, and hasn't been since 1781, when we moved from living a 28-year life cycle, a Saturnian cycle, to now we're living an 84 Uranian cycle. And with that mutation, the energy being changed. So basically, the centers are called they're called centers, and the pathways between them are called channels. Okay, and they come from the Kabbalistic tree of life. And when we got the sun in the 52nd hexagram, that's right over here, This is it's mapped in a channel that we call this is called the channel. It's in the channel of concentration. It's on the upper right hand side of the root center. The root center is like this big pressure engine, like a steam engine. It pushes things through. So anyway, basically, I've really found that this human design system has been amazingly accurate, and it's become my primary tool in when I do provide readings. And then all these black strips of paper on here, what they represent is that these are the gates that are being activated by the sun, the planets, the nodes, and regardless of whether they form a channel or not. So we have the following hanging gates or potentials at the beginning of the one road Trecena. We have the Earth is down here in the 58. And then 180 degrees away from it, we have the sun over here in the 52. The north node is here in the 1. South node of the moon down here in the 2. And then we have Mercury is up here in the gate of details, the 62. Venus is in the 31, which is one of the gates in the alpha channel. And then we have Jupiter is here in the 15. This is about the rhythms that get set. And then Neptune's over here in the 55, which is one of the more spiritual gates. So obviously every gate activation doesn't form a channel, but the information can be very helpful if you know your human design chart, because some of these transits form channels with the potentials from your personal body graph in your human design chart. And if you want to just check this stuff out, go to jovianarchive.com, and there's a point on in that website where it says a free rave chart. And if you click on that and put your birthday information, you can get a free chart that will show what your personal design is, and from that sort of use that to sort of understand how the energetics are hooking up different parts of your design. I'm not going to follow every the moon in this demonstration, because it moves really fast and it will activate 3 or 4 gates a day, and this gets complicated enough just trying to do all the planets and nodes and the sun. So at the beginning of this one road or ebb Trecena, we've got 2 channels defined. We've got Pluto's down here in the 38. And Saturn is up here in the 28, which is the channel of struggle, which has been affecting us, and it will continue to affect us until the beginning of August. And this brings experiences where people struggle against overwhelming odds. It's through this archetypal hero's journey of fighting for our purpose that empowers others to stubbornly fight for what holds meaning for them. You know, this is about empowerment that comes from being who we're meant to be, instead of following the conditioning of our families or schools, religions, or governments. And the channel's said to be deaf, and the reason it's deaf is so that it doesn't hear all that background chatter and can really stay on its authentic path. And then the other channel we have is we have Mars up here in the 45th gate, and we have Uranus down here in the 21. And this gives us the 2145 channel, which is called the money line. And this one's been coming up a bunch as we've got this group of planets that have been, moving like a freight train. And each one coming in, activating this point, and then moving on, and then something else popping in. So the money line is tribal. It's about who's part of your tribe, resources and support for your family. Your tribe is not just your family. There's people in your life that, they're your family, even if they're not your blood. And it's really, tribal stuff is always about resources. And this is having this channel being defined for everybody right now. What it does is, the conditioning force of it is that we feel this drive to gain resources through using our willpower, and this often happens without anyone else to collaborate with. And it brings a focus on who are the haves and who are the have-nots on the material plane. And this is a time when people are going to believe that they can manifest what they want through their will. Well, this is going to complete on July 2nd when Mars moves on to the 12th gate, And when that happens, these folks who've not completed their will to materialism by that date are going to find that they don't have the energy to continue that. It's not going to happen for them. And then, so this is where we are, right at midnight Eastern Daylight Time, on one road, one ebb. But later in the day, on the 1st, the sun is moving out of this 52, and it's moving into the 39. So let's see. Let's find. Oh, we're going to need that. Into the 39. Taking the piece to stick. And that gives us a defined solar plexus. And that basically, and we also have during the same time period, is that the Earth moves out of the 58 and it moves into the 38 where Pluto is. And but the 39 connected up to the 55, that's going to bring us this is called the channel of emoting between the Sun and the 39, Neptune and the 55. And this is going to be affecting us until July 6th. And the time period will be when people feel a pressure to in the form of an emotional wave. And the best way to deal with this level of sensitivity is to appreciate both the lows and the highs. Because, when we have an emotional wave, we have a peak and we have a trough. And we basically move through from hope to despair, back to hope. And it's just an energetic. It's an energetic of the motor being activated through the definition. So, recognize that part of our human experience, that this is just part of it, and it's temporary. And so for those of you who don't have this channel in their birth chart, it's going to be there, and then by the 6th, it's going to wrap up, and it won't be affecting us anymore. But this can really bring lessons that yield wisdom as long as we can stay present in moving from hope to despair and back to hope in the cycle. We can also tap into great creativity by fueling, taking the melancholy or blue feeling that we have and applying it in some artistic expression. And the artistic expression can be whatever you think's artistic or creative. It doesn't have to be based on anybody else. This also is deeply romantic. It's acoustically sensitive, so listening to music or talking with a loved one is favored. And so now we're just going to fly through, hopefully, what's going to be going on during the Trecena. On the 2nd, July 2nd, Mars is going to move out of the 45, so it comes out of here, and it moves over to the 12, so it's now here, which then means that money line channel is no longer in effect, and so these the ego center and the throat center are no longer part of the definition. And then on July 3rd, Venus moves out of the 31 and over to the 33. And then on the 4th, July 4th, Mercury is going to move out of the gate of details, the 62, and it's going to move down to the 53, down here on the root center. And this is about beginning things. So people might find themselves beginning things during this, but without the 42, they don't get completed. So, and then on July 6th, the sun then leaves the 39. So we just have that channel emoting for a short amount of time. Sun leaves the 39. The solar plexus, it goes back to being undefined. And then and it's going to move from the 39 to the 53, which is where we already have Mercury. And then the Earth moves out of the 38, and it's going to move to the 54, which the 54 is this gate right here. It's called the Merry Maiden, and it's about having an ambition to rise up the hierarchy of the tribe. And then on the 8th, July 8th, we have Venus leaves the 33 and moves over to the 7 in the channel of the Alpha. And on July 10th, we have Mars leaves the 12, and it moves down to join Jupiter here in the 15. And then on the 12th, Jupiter leaves the 15 and moves to the 52 over here. And and on that same day, on the 12th, the sun leaves the 53, but we still have Mercury there. So it moves up here to the 61, up here in the head center, and the Earth leaves the 54. So over here, but we still have. Okay, yeah, the Earth leaves the 54, and it is going to move up to the 62, which is the opposition of the 61, where the Sun is. And then on the very last day of the Trecena, July 13, we have Venus leaves the 7th gate, and it moves up to the 4th gate up in the Ajna center. Okay, before I go into the daily energy of the ebb Trecena, I thought I'd look at the metaphysics of July 2013. Well, July, as you know, is the 7th month, but we take that 7 and we add it up with the digits of 2013, and when we add them all together, we get, 7 and 2 and 1 and 3, we get 13. And when we add the 1 and 3 together, what we get is we have the 13-4 month in numerology. And what this means is this brings an organization or planning or an effort to events and activities that really began last month in June, so that we can move them to the next level of manifestation. And the 13-4 combination is represented by the Death and Emperor cards in the Tarot, which is really about releasing what's unnecessary and obstacles to move forward, that's death, on our path that ultimately empowers others through our examples of selfless, enlightened leadership. That's the Emperor. The theme of leadership actually is also being felt astrologically, with Venus and the Sun are moving through Leo, which is one of the signs of leadership. And it's interesting, the day that Venus leaves Leo is also the day that the Sun enters Leo. So for the entire month of July, we have a Leo activation. And of course, we also have Uranus turning retrograde in Aries, which Aries is also another sign that's linked to leadership. So we've got these planetary activations in leadership every day of this Emperor month, which the Emperor card is about leadership. And in June, the majority of the planets are returning to water. They returned to water and activated this grand trine. Between all these planets, we had Venus there, and Mercury, and the Sun, and Jupiter, and they were forming a equilateral triangle with Saturn and Neptune. And there's going to be a second grand trine, but this time it's later on the 29th of July, and this one's going to be in Earth. And it's become a real point of interest because the planets actually form a hexagram with the water trine, but it's really short-lived because that second trine in Earth involves the Moon and Venus along with Pluto. So it's really going to be an impact that is at best last a day. But the intensity peaks towards the end of July as Mars brings even more instability to the Uranus-Pluto square that we've been talking about. And this is really going to push us our own individual authentic paths rather than submitting to the machinery of governments and corporations. I really think July is going to be a time when we see a lot more activism and protest. Mars moves into Cancer on the last day of the Road Tzolkin on July 13th, joining the Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter in the sign of the nurturer of the zodiac, which with its focus on the home and family, and also using our feelings to determine if our outer world's in line with our inner world. This also brings an emphasis on the water with the stellium and group of planets in Cancer, along with Neptune and Pisces and Saturn and Scorpio, the other two. And so and it's been interesting watching how Neptune and Saturn are playing together. And I always look at it as Neptune is about creativity and spirituality, and Saturn is about, working and planning and being grounded in our efforts. So when you combine those two, when you practice something or work on something spiritual like yoga, or practice sitting or whatever, or you're working on your creative talents, or working on your painting techniques, or whatever it is, that's really merging these two energies in the way they're meant to be merged. And we've talked about it, that when all these planets are moving through, they hit that point between 4 and 5 degrees of Cancer, linking up with Saturn and Neptune. But then later they move along and they hit 10 to 12 degrees Cancer, and that's where they're opposing Pluto and squaring or challenging Uranus. And so that continues to touch off this wave of transformation as we keep getting one pulse after another from these planetary alignments. And the Uranus-Pluto square is really activated by the Sun in the first week of July and Mars during the last week of July. So I really think that July comes in like a lion and leaves like a lion. This is going to be a very fiery July. I just see a lot of the energy is going to be about revolution, about the individual making changes in the world. As we begin in July, all the planets are appearing to move forward from our vantage point here on Earth, except for Mercury, which is on the inside track of the Sun, and Saturn is retrograde for a few more days. Chiron is retrograde. Neptune is newly retrograde, and Pluto in Capricorn is also retrograde. And I've said it before that the planets do not really move in reverse from their orbit. It's just we're on this track here, and when we are passing them on the inside track, they look like they're moving backwards compared to the stars, which are very, very far away. So, just a few things about each retrograde thing. Mercury is retrograde until July 20th. So at the beginning of July is a good time to kind of avoid signing contracts or other legal papers, or making major decisions, or major purchases, or even taking a new job. But, you can't have your life completely dependent on the stars. So if you have to do one of those things, it's really best that you really look at the conditions, read it, be very clear on it, be very careful about everything. But if you can leave something and postpone something until after Mercury's moving direct on July 20th, then it's favorable. And, Mercury retrograde forces us to slow down and pay attention to our lives by making us focus on the details of every daily experience. And the retrograde cycles provide information about a change or course correction. And in the sign of Cancer, the themes that are powerful feelings, emotional awareness, intuition, guiding our adjustments within our home, and making adjustments with our homes and families, which will be particularly apparent and could have a profound effect in our lives. And if you look at the house in your astrological chart that contains from 13 degrees to 23 degrees of Cancer, you're going to find out where this theme, where you're going to be experiencing these revisions, reviews, rethinkings of the characteristics that are represented by that house. But Jupiter is newly in Cancer, so this is a time period where we very well may feel like pushed out of our comfort zone as we become aware of a totally new journey that we're on. And by the middle of July, Mercury is going to be slowing down as it's getting ready to stop and turn direct at 13 degrees Cancer on the 20th. And when it's slowing down from our perspective here on Earth, that's when the planet's at the peak of its power. And even folks who don't really follow astrology, or you tell them Mercury's retrograde, and they go, "Oh, right, that's why my computer's having a problem," or that's why I talked to somebody and we didn't even understand each other. Particularly between the 15th and the 23rd, this could be very difficult energy, because this retrograde cycle, when it's slowing down, it's at a standstill, it's within orb to opposing Pluto and squaring Uranus, which creates that T-square that's going to have people, they're going to really feel pressure that may lead to unexpected events. And I realize that folks are more likely to pop, so use a certain amount of caution and awareness when dealing with people who may feel stressed and they don't even know why. And this is a time period before Mercury changes direction. It'd be wise to pay close attention to the things that you say and the instructions that you have to read and the contracts you have to sign. Mercury retrograde during this period will spend 10 weeks in Cancer. So we're really going to be reviewing and focusing on our homes and families. And this is from the perspective of security. And I think it's important during the middle of July to be aware that Mercury, at the peak of its power, this is to the Greeks, the Greek god was Hermes. The Romans renamed him to Mercury. But what's important to realize about Mercury retrograde is this is where he's playing his trickster god role. He was the messenger of the god, so he'd go out and he'd deliver the messages. But if you were not on his good side, first of all, you might not get your message, or he may alter it so the meaning is something different than it's intended. And I've used this quote before from Joseph Campbell, but I just think it's beautiful for describing the trickster because it's also an excellent description of Mercury retrograde. And the quote is, "Almost all non-literate mythology has a trickster hero of some kind. Theirs is a special property in the trickster. He always breaks in just as the unconscious does, to trip up the rational situation. He is both a fool and someone who is beyond the system. The trickster represents all those possibilities of life that your mind hasn't decided it wants to deal with. The mind structures a lifestyle, and the fool or trickster represents another whole range of possibilities, and he doesn't respect the values that you set up for yourself and just comes in and smashes them. And the fool is the breakthrough of the absolute into the field of controlled social order. And to me, that's what Mercury retrograde does. And then Saturn's going to be retrograde until July 8th, right in the middle of the 1 Eb Trecena. And so it's really at the peak of its power. And the themes of Saturn and Scorpio are loss, depression, failure, fear, the shadow, betrayal, the stuff that goes deep. Saturn and Scorpio just doesn't put up with superficiality. And you know what I've been seeing? A lot of relationships that have gone through some very hard choices, with Saturn and Scorpio, including folks that actually have had to amputate people out of their lives in order to preserve their connection with something greater than themselves. And Saturn entered into its retrograde shadow period. So when it first crossed that line where it will originally, it will be moving direct again, it crossed that line November 15th, and that's where it's going to turn direct at 5 degrees of Scorpio. So that brought us a period where we got information was received regarding our commitments that came up and got reviewed as Saturn turned retrograde from February 18th until July 8th, 2013. And this is ultimately going to yield a change in course regarding the themes during this period from July 8th to October 14th of this year. After its retrograde period, we can advance forward with our goals, feeling a little more rested, with a little more efficient process, as long as we've really honored the Saturn trying to limit us, slow us down, instead of trying to push through regardless of the resistance. Another retrograde planet, Chiron, retrograde in Pisces. Chiron is about releasing stuck emotional energy so that we can return to the natural flow of life. Chiron's the wounded healer in Greek mythology. He was a teacher, a healer, an astrologer to the Greeks. Retrograde Chiron has us reviewing our wounds so that they can be released by having the courage to open our hearts to any fear or pain associated with our past. And when Chiron's in Pisces, people are really willing to sacrifice their individual pain in hopes of finding bliss in universal consciousness. And at its worst, it can manifest as folks trying to justify their victimhood as being some form of martyrdom. This should be about transcendence and surrender without losing ourselves in the experience. The retrograde aspect brings a longing for lost loves and the memory of our past losses, encouraging us to look at our core wounds and to bring them to the surface so that they can be healed. A trap of Chiron and Pisces is codependent relationships where we focus on healing others rather than ourselves. And Chiron's going to be direct in November, so this time of exploring the depths of our psyches will be with us for months to come. And then we've got Neptune in Pisces also, and it's retrograde, and it's seeking transcendence through spiritual experiences. This is a time to use spiritual practices to keep us grounded as we expand our intuition and consciousness. And this will be important energy to nurture as well in the as we are in the middle of all these 4 years of unexpected rebellion of the individual with Uranus and Aries, in that challenging square to the decaying power structure represented by Pluto in Capricorn. So this is really difficult energy that we've been dealing with a time of upheaval, destruction, death, unexpected change, natural disasters, violence, and war. So finding our own peace in our connection to spirit will be an important quality to cultivate now during this tumultuous period. Neptune pushes us to transcend the physical world and connect with our higher purpose and spiritual transformation. But it also encourages escapisms, particularly in Pisces, where some are going to seek to be unconscious while others are seeking to awaken. And then we've got Pluto. Okay, last retrograde planet. We've got Pluto retrograde and in Capricorn. This is the planet of transformation through death and rebirth, moving retrograde, which has got us again reviewing the past and will require us to release anything from the past that's a burden to our new path. So we can choose to let go of things, or they're just gonna go. It doesn't really matter. But, basically what we have a choice about is how we react to what's being taken. And Pluto will not take anything that isn't necessary. It's just going to take the baggage that is in blocking us from moving forward in our rebirth, and Pluto again represents death and completion in Capricorn. This is what's breaking down the structures to bring about transformation of humanity. So anyway, so let's look at the daily vibrational energy for this Road Tzolkin. July 1st is one ebb or road in the Tzolkin. This is about unity being experienced through serving our community. And on this day, Venus, which is right here, newly in Leo, is in a square to Saturn over here. So what that means is it's a 90-degree angle from our perspective here on the Earth, which can be a day of having difficulty relating to others, feeling cool, reserved, isolated. Many will be reevaluating what they're getting out of their relationships as compared to what they're putting in. So if you feel loneliness or depression on the 1st, just realize that this too shall pass. And then also we have the Sun over here in opposition to Pluto. So from our perspective here on Earth, this is a 180-degree angle. These planets are, the Sun is 180 degrees in the opposite direction from Pluto. And this colors the day's energy, which can cause really intense encounters with others or circumstances that expose something that was hidden, perhaps that we chose to ignore, for the purpose of transforming the old, worn out patterns that no longer serve us. This indicates power struggles with others, particularly with people who are in authority. This is a day really has this hallmark of the relationship difficulties that could possibly lead to breakups. You may want to keep your mind you may want to keep that in mind, that this is kind of this underlying breakup energy rather than trying to repair the damage to today's words. So basically, you might want to use this day to to be careful about what you say to somebody you care about, because it could have more of a punch than you might have intended. So basically, it's easier to be careful today than have to repair this stuff down the road. Overall, we're talking about transformation on some levels, as the shift is requiring away from doing things the same old way. The Cancer Capricorn axis brings tension related to balancing home and family with career and responsibilities in the outer world. With the moon in harmony with Mars and Jupiter and challenged by Mercury, the day's energy moves from desiring to work independently from others, with people being critical in their communications, particularly with those that they have intimate relationships with, and then later in the day, feeling in the flow and having a sense of wholeness is where we go. And then on the 2nd of July, we've got two Ben or reed or corn, duality experienced through maintaining the home, with the Taurus moon is opposed by Saturn and in harmony with Neptune, and the sun, and challenged by Venus and supported by Pluto. The day's emotional wave moves from feeling lonely and isolated while being very sensitive to the moods of others, and yet also having sort of this pleasant social energy for getting to know people. And then later, Pluto brings out really intense emotions and stimulates sensitivity, which also is favorable for sexual relationships. And then finally, feeling balance between our inner and outer worlds. July 3rd is 3 Ish, or Jaguar in the Mayan Tzolkin calendar, which is about taking action through enjoying nature, with the moon in Taurus in harmony with Mercury, which is a day with increased communications and lots of chatting with friends and neighbors and coworkers. This is not likely to be very profound. It's just sort of being social. Try to avoid gossip under this kind of an influence. And then the 4th, we have 4 Men or Eagle. This is about stability, being seen from a higher perspective. And on this day, the sun is in a 90-degree square to Uranus. So from our perspective here on Earth, there's a 90-degree angle being formed between the sun and Uranus. And this is again continuing to activate that T-square of opposing Pluto, but while directing us, that opposition, while it is pointed towards Uranus. This can bring sudden upsets or behaviors that's unexpected to others. This is a day where you can expect the unexpected, such as cars breaking down unexpectedly, or the sudden ending of a relationship, or an argument that begins out of nowhere, or, some other disruptive event that cannot be foreseen. And when I saw this alignment on Independence Day, here in the United States, the Independence Day is in the United States is the United States' birthday, and so that means that your sun, right on the point where it was when the United States Declaration of Independence was signed, in a square to Uranus. This is a powerful factor in the U.S.A.'s solar return chart for 2013, which we can use to talk about what's going to be happening in the U.S. between now and July of next year. With Uranus in a tight square to the United States natal sun on the nation's birthday, this is just like a solar return chart that you would do for a person, but we can look at the nation's solar return chart and broadcast the themes of events for that nation for the upcoming year. And just so you know, I use Ebenezer Sibley's chart for the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at 5:10 p.m. The sun is in Cancer at 13 degrees 19 minutes, and it's opposing the solar return Pluto and tightly squaring Uranus. So when we think about this, can you say chaos and darkness? But we also have we have this square here to Uranus, and we have this opposition to Pluto. But then we also have Jupiter in Cancer over here, filling in the Grand Trine with Neptune in Pisces and Saturn in Scorpio. And so says we have spiritual work really being favored over the next year in the USA. I find it really interesting, though, that there's a really tight yod or finger of fate from the solar return moon sextile Venus, and both planets are in conjunct or a very uncomfortable 150 degrees that points right at Pluto in Capricorn. So this is really quite intense. Because when we think about this is this finger of fate. And the solar return chart I did, just so you know, is for, and I did it for Washington D.C. But solar return for the Philadelphia 1776 July 4th information, and on that it has 3 degrees Aries as an ascendant for the solar return. So the signs line up in the houses that they rule. So what does this mean? We've got the Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury in the 4th house in Cancer, which brings a focus on the security of home and family as to what we're thinking about and discussing. And on some levels, this is where we find our confidence. But these homes are being opposed by Pluto and Capricorn, which is about death and rebirth of the structures that have outgrown their usefulness, particularly governments, corporations, and religions. Pluto's in the 10th house. So this is about the way that the United States is seen in the world is going to go through a major transformation. Saturn's in the 7th house. This Saturn's about limitation, and this is in the 7th house is about one-to-one relationship. Perhaps there'll be limitation between the one-to-one relationships of the president and other world leaders, or different individuals within government, and this also is the house of open enemies, is in a tight trine to Neptune in the 12th house, along with Chiron, which is about that our illusions and woundings will be our self-undoing, and about having blind spots towards where our secret enemies are. Uranus and Aries at the head of the T-square, from the opposition of the solar return Sun to Pluto in the 1st house. This brings about an unexpected change and revolution to the identity of the people who are living in the United States. But what I'm most taken with is this finger of fate pointing directly at Pluto. Pluto's at 10 degrees of Capricorn, and is coming from the Gemini moon at 9 degrees Gemini, and Venus in Leo also at 9 degrees. And given how fast the moon moves, I think it's really significant at that moment that the sun returns to the point where the U.S.A. was born. Pluto and Capricorn in the 10th, I think the United States government and the people are going to experience a major transformation to how they're going to be seen around the globe. Also on the 4th, we have the Gemini moon challenged by Neptune in harmony with Venus, which is as an emotional energy moving from daydreams and fantasies, feeling more important than reality, and then later having pleasant energy to be with friends and loved ones. July 5th is one key or wisdom in the Tzolkin. This is about empowerment through introspection, meditation, and forgiveness, with the moon in Gemini in harmony with Uranus, which has kind of this pleasant yet restless energy that desires emotional excitement. People may be people who enter our lives at this time may shake things up where we've become lethargic. And then on the 6th, it's 6 Kaban, or Earth, being in the flow through gratitude for Mother Nature, for Mother Earth. which is has the moon conjunct Mars and Jupiter. Emotionally, the day moves from irritable feelings and critical communications with Mars to good feelings and generosity to others with Jupiter. These two planetary influences on the moon can bring a surge of activities, with Mars increasing the pace and Jupiter opening up the floodgates of beliefs and feelings working as one. So I think you should be aware of where other people's passions are on the 6th. July 7th is 7 Etsnob, or Flint, reflection through being introspective. And on this day, Venus trines Uranus. So Venus, from our perspective here on Earth, is forming a 120-degree angle to Uranus, and that's favorable. It's a great day to try something out of the ordinary. The daily routine is not it was just not going to cut it under this influence. Folks are looking to do something stimulated in their social lives and relationships. It's a day where there may be unique encounters and like a love relationship that begins under this influence. They tend to be exciting, electric, unstable, and short. But they have the potential to really change our lives. This could also be unconventional agreements in our relationships, such as agreeing to change from having an exclusive coupling to experimenting with having other partners or things like that. Experiencing different types of entertainment is also favored under this transit by enjoying music, art, theater that's outside of your normal choices. And then we also have the moon in Cancer in a trine to Saturn and Neptune, and opposing Pluto and squaring Uranus. The day moves from sort of more sober and realistic view of life, with our innermost subconscious fantasies and daydreams confusing the process, which may not be great for really accomplishing much work, while we kind of then, settle into, more of a realistic, sober view of life. And then later things shift where we're feeling deep emotions that can come rising to the surface. And finally, people are more likely to be acting hasty and jumping to conclusions. So, that's time to be cautious. The 8th is 8 Kawak, or storm, balanced through recognizing the gifts of adversity as Saturn turns direct. Woohoo! It's going to take time to pick up speed, but this begins a time period where we can start to implement the course corrections regarding an obstacle that's been in our path over the last few months. Also on the 8th, we've got the Cancer new moon. And new moons are times of new beginnings. And in Cancer, this is about shifting and changing of our families and home life to bring more security. New moons bring an opportunity to set an intention for manifestation on the following full moon. So look at the house of your astrology chart that contains 16 degrees of Cancer to consider the area of your life being activated by this new moon. For me, that's going to be my first house of self, the body, style, dispositions, mannerisms, outward behavior, things like that. So I might look to set an intention related to using this energy. And, again, we got Jupiter just beginning to transit Cancer through the next year. So these themes will get like a real extra boost. The moon merges with the sun and retrograde Mercury, which is positive for integrating our thoughts and moods. With Saturn turning direct during this new moon, we may have a sense of our new beginning is somehow fated or predetermined. Overall, this brings a feeling that something big is being born. And this may amplify our needs for security. These new situations will assist us in aligning our with our emotional connections. July 9th is 9 Aha, or Sun, patience experienced through honoring the wisdom and the memory of our ancestors as the Sun merges with retrograde Mercury. So these two will be in a straight line from the perspective here on Earth, which this is something that prior to turning retrograde. Um, uh, Mercury, actually, what we see is, um, yeah, Mercury it tends to get way out in front of the sun, and then it retrogrades back, conjoins the sun, and then it falls behind the sun. So, and I'm going to represent it like this, okay? We'll start over here. We have Mercury with the sun. Mercury moves out in front of the sun. It creates tension, and then it starts to retrograde, which releases the tension. They then merge, and then the sun gets out in front, and Mercury gets to the point where it starts to move direct again, and it chases after the sun, and then the cycle continues. So basically, what we're looking at is trying to illustrate this pattern using the markers. Is that when back, the way I look at this is back before mechanized warfare. You would have your infantry and you would have your cavalry, and the generals would send their cavalry out ahead of the infantry to scout out the enemy's position, look for possible resources, get the idea of the lay of the terrain if they hadn't been there, move troops in, with maximum efficiency and safety for their strategic advantage. And I like to think of Mercury when it's out stretching out in front of the sun, that's what it's doing. It's out on doing recon, and gathering intelligence to report back to our consciousness. And then when they conjunct, that's when the information then gets to where it needs to go. But while it's out in front, we're getting information that we've got no place to deposit. And this increases our anxiety and a sense of losing control as Mercury's out in front of the sun. But as it retrogrades back, you can see the tension releases with it, and then when it merges with the sun on July 9th, this is where we find a destination for the intelligence. And then once behind the sun, Mercury feels as though it's creating drag that retards the possibility of implementing the new data until it then regains its forward motion in its pursuit of the sun on July 20th. And with the Cancer energy, with the sun, Mercury, and Jupiter, we're expanding our emotional awareness to move in new directions. And and these new directions are really about security, the home, the family. And on this day, we've got Leo moon challenged by Saturn, which may bring a few hours where people are feeling lonely and out of touch with others. The moon moves fast, so these angles don't impact us for the whole day. They're there for a couple of hours. The 10th is 10 Imish, or crocodile, and it is 10 is about about manifestation through new beginnings. With the moon in Leo is finding support from Uranus and merging with Venus. The day's emotional wave moves from craving emotional excitement then it moves to wanting to do something outside of the daily routine, and then later with the Venus energy, it's feeling cheerful, warm, gregarious, and wanting to be out and socialize. And so those two energies work pretty well together. July 11th is 11 Eek, or wind, which is about resolution through communications, with the Leo moon in harmony with Mars, which brings a few hours of people wanting to work independently, and people may express themselves with courage during that window. The 12th is 12 Akbal, or night, understanding through contemplating the stars, with the Virgo moon in harmony with Jupiter and Saturn, and opposed by Neptune and supported by Pluto. Early in the day, we'll want to be with old friends and have congenial interactions, but later it has us wanting to be alone in our thoughts and feelings. And while we're actually feeling sensitive emotionally, and confused about the authenticity of what's being felt, and then finally we'll be feeling that on a kind of a deeper, more intense level of our emotions under the influence of Pluto. July 13 is 13 con or seed movement to the next stage through planting seeds, making new connections. Mars moves into Cancer. Okay, well, here we are. Mars in Cancer. Woo. Finally get to move a planet, which adds another planet to the sign of the nurturer. Mars brings power and strength, like it's subtle, like water in Cancer, running down a hill. It might not seem like it's doing much, but over time, it can carve out the land into a great canyon or otherwise completely change the landscape. And this is the day of the last quarter moon in Virgo, being stimulated. I don't think it could be last quarter moon. Probably first quarter moon. Stimulated by Mercury and the Sun. I don't think it's a quarter moon at all. Anyway, the moon's in Virgo. It's forming a 60-degree angle to Mercury and the Sun, which is a stimulating angle. The day begins with communications and social exchanges picking up related to common interests, and then later it shifts to the feelings of inner and outer equanimity. So anyway, no matter what these energies and how they're affecting you during the one road trisena, take some time out to be in the flow of the planet by being in nature, watching a sunrise or sunset, communing with the stars, being conscious of the moment through introspection, meditation, being with somebody you love. Every single day is a blessing, no matter what dramas are here to distract us. We're all here given the performance of a lifetime on this world stage. So just take some time out to observe the play as well as act your part by remembering you're a spiritual being that's having a human experience. Thanks for checking out New World Birth. The next segment of Care and Feeding of a New World Age will be on July 14th, 2013 for 1 Chachan or Serpent. And we're going to talk about Uranus turning retrograde, Mercury turning direct, Venus moving into Virgo, the sun moves into Leo, and we got the Aquarius full moon. So you can check us out on Facebook or YouTube or the Mayan Magics website. And I encourage you to share this information as videos or as text as widely as you choose. And as always, you're welcome to contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com. If you have any questions or if you wish to schedule a reading, I am providing readings and wish to make this service available to the greatest amount of folks. So I've created 3 options with 3 levels of compensation. These readings are designed to give you information to help you navigate, these current times of uncertainty. And at the basic level, we're going to look at your individual strategy and authority from your human design chart to help you understand how to make life decisions based on your own unique design. And then I include 3 months of astrological transits as they relate to your natal and progressed astrology chart, along with the human design reading at the middle level. And then at the top level, the human design reading, astrology transit reading is recorded and sent to you as an MP3 file that can be downloaded to your computer. So if you've been thinking about getting a reading, please contact me. I'd love to provide you a reading during these uncertain times. You'll need to either be able to call me in Maine in the U.S.A., or we can connect on Skype to receive your reading. And I'm also accepting donations. So please, if you really want to see this continue, please, contribute anything you feel you can. For donations, we want to keep these videos freely available. On Facebook, it's really pretty simple to make a donation. You just go to the New World Birth page, and you go click on the About thing, and under that you'll see a link under a website link under Contact, and that's going to take you directly to making a donation to New World Birth's PayPal account. Otherwise, you can find it on PayPal under newworldbirth@yahoo.com's email address. Anyway, as always, I'm absolutely blessed that you've taken the time out to connect with my passion for these ancient mysteries and their application to our journey during this incarnation. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste and Lakesh, and hope to connect with you again. Peace.